All right.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Sure, we got our.
Oh, we are up and running. So I know we had talked about potentially, setting up and actually doing a show. And the more I think about it, I'm getting kind of stuck on that piece. And I think we can start this off and just do it badly. Because for the most part, it's just the conversations we're having.
It is.
And then as we continue through the process and actually get to the point where we start publishing some things, I think the process itself will allow us to grow into something.
I think so.
One of the black belts at the jiu-jitsu gym I train at, he said, take imperfect action. He's like, don't overthink it. He's like, you want to do this? Just start, take imperfect action, and then let the process take it from there. And one of the things, I did a mushroom trip last night, and one of the major takeaways that kind of recurred throughout the trip was to trust the process, that the process in and of itself has merit. That, when you look at plants and how they we're in spring right now and everything is lush and beautiful. And that, at some point during the summer, the flowers will fade and then you'll have the leaves, and then in fall, the leaves will fall, but that is a process. And to embrace the process and, actually just take imperfect action and find our footing, as we've been doing lately,
Yeah.
So
Another way of describing that is failing upward,
there we go.
right? I like that one for some reason. Yeah, just do the thing.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And I'm horrible about that, right? It's I don't want to say I'm a perfectionist. That's not quite right, because nothing I do is perfect to begin with. It's not like I save myself and finally when I do something, it's perfect. That never happens. It's more, well, I've hit this sort of bump in the road, right? And it's like, this is just, forget it. I'm out.
Yeah.
Sadly, when it comes to a lot of things in my life over the years, I have taken that path, which has only cheated me. And I feel like I'm making up some lost time in some ways in the last few years, but hopefully that's growth, right?
Yeah, actually, that'd be an interesting thing to talk about, because making up for lost time is very much so a theme of my life right now.
Yours and mine both. And it's not getting any, time is not slowing down.
No,
right?
No, it is.
Oh my God, it's hurtling forward.
Oh my goodness.
You're time traveling essentially into the future faster than we need to be. That's the problem. We're on this time machine. I want the regular Earth time, but instead we're on some future machine, man.
Yeah.
What's that about?
And it's clicking.
It's clicking.
When I was like broke and jobless, time couldn't have moved any slower. Couldn't have moved any.
Well, now we know the key to immortality.
Just
lay down in the gutter. Long days, man.
Those were very long days. And I mean, time did not fly back then at all. And now, even as we're dragging through the week, and we send each other messages, what is it going to take? Thursday got here faster than I expected.
Yeah.
Usually. I still only want to work 4 days a week, though. But that making...
Well, that was a 4-day week. So that actually made it easier to get to Thursday. But point taken.
That it did. That it really did. And even then, Thursday was a bear. But I wouldn't have imagined you to be somebody that would be making up for lost time. From where I sit, and from the nature of our relationship, I look to you as someone that has it together, where you want to be, kind of sound in your hobbies and your life and stuff.
And we need to talk about that then. on air if need be, but you need to find a different, better role model. Our mutual friend who will dance, who can dance with the stars. I mean, that should be your role model right there. The ultimately secure, ever laid, what should we call him? Just R for now.
Yeah, R is good, but here's the thing: is that R has, their attachment style is not secure, and there's challenges going on there as well
Sure.
for him. But when you're looking at like, we have a mutual friend that has a gregarious personality that loves to get dressed up, loves to step out, go dancing, talk to people, engage with the world, which is an area that I know sometimes I'm just so much more shy
Yeah.
than he is.
Yeah.
And when you're going out, it's like you want to have a good time.
Sure.
You have him there.
Well, and to be clear, he's doing it in a way that's not obnoxious, right?
Mm-mm.
He's barely drinking, if at all. And it's not, barreling into a crowd and blowing them up like 10 pins. No, he's insinuating in a very casual way that's friendly and easygoing. And, and if he hits a wall or a dead end in one particular place, well, it just kind of turns and keeps going. It's not a big deal. I mean, he's not going to put his hair up and then just walk out of the room.
Right.
He's cool. But look, I mean, from the outside, different people at different times can look like they have it together, but truly, as we know, because we're human, almost none of us have it completely together, right? But the only standard I've got, the only most immediate standard I've got is my own life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we cannot help but to compare ourselves to others. And that's where self-esteem is different. Maybe did we touch on this in a prior conversation? Self-esteem versus self-compassion, right?
Yeah.
Self-compassion, you're not comparing your worth to other people. Self-esteem, you really are, right?
Yeah.
So you're saying, how do I compare in whether it's economically, romantically, whatever it is, in this modern world we live in? And I don't know that's the key to happiness. I mean, I doubt it, but
and I find myself comparing myself to people quite often. And it doesn't make me happy for sure.
No.
I look at some people in the areas in which they're secure that I'd like to be more secure in, and I kind of judge myself to their standard without not only factoring in some of the challenges I've had, but factoring in the challenges that they have that I don't know about, that I'm not taking into account as, you sit and you look at another person's life with rose-colored glasses. And I think that's why I deleted both most of the social media apps off my phone, because one, I was spending entirely too much time just staring at it, getting absolutely no value from it. And then also like only seeing the positive of other people's lives and then judging myself harshly. But, that making up for lost time is a really big theme, going on for me right now, which is why, I've chosen to, restarting my career a few years ago, and not even really a career, just taking a different type of job, working there and kind of slowly growing in that job because I needed some humility. I needed to build some new skills, and then choosing some of the hobbies I've been choosing, and then our upcoming endeavor, trying to get up to the mountain and try and actually reach the summit of a mountain at some point, which, again, just kind of push myself forward.
Sure. Well, we like to see something that passes for progress in our lives, right? It's never enough for just time to merely pass and just watch grass grow. I mean, and especially as you get older, there's an expectation, or at least for me there is, that, okay, I'm going to have a certain set of goods in my life. And I don't mean physical, tangible goods, but maybe that's part of it too. But things to have the good life at this age, I would have expected X, Y, and Z. Well, maybe I have only Y, whatever it is. You just want that sense of forward momentum.
Yeah.
How much of that is again, the world we live in, the society we live in. Was it always that way? If you were a peasant in the Middle Ages in continental Europe, I think things were pretty, there wasn't a lot of forward momentum. You just got up and did what you did yesterday.
Right.
And there was no expectation of anything. So I think with our capitalist / late capitalist society, there's always this sense of progress and that, and it's good in many ways, but what it means though is that if you're not progressing or you feel like you're not progressing, you feel deficient in some way, right? Or you're not fulfilled, so on and so forth.
That's a very astute observation, because I was capitalism does, right? It brings things to blossom and then they die off, and then it just, that process cycles through constantly, and it's like, well, I gotta buy this new thing, and I gotta buy this, and I gotta buy that, and the next thing you know, you have more stuff than you know what to do with, and you're forgetting half the stuff you have. And you do, and I often will look at myself as deficient. And it's like I'm not where I want to be financially, you know. All honesty, you know, I'm enjoying my job, I'm enjoying my coworkers, I'm enjoying the things I'm learning from the environment I'm in. But this isn't a passion of mine, you know, and it's finding that thing that I can apply myself to,
right?
That I don't drag myself out of bed to get to, you know, is you know, one of those goals, right?
Sure.
So, you know, it's it's a grind getting there.
You know, it can be, and the thing is, you know, you've heard that saying, do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Well, I mean, most people don't do what they love, and really can't when you look at the spread of jobs in society, or what people do for money. Most of it's not very lovable, right? So there's always exceptions to every rule. But so for me, like, I pretty early on in my career was like, I'm never gonna like love this. But if I can find the right niche, you know, then I can respect it and appreciate it, and put my heart into it, which maybe is sort of a proxy for loving it, right? If you give a shit, right? So, but there's still limits to that. Like even with, and I like my current situation, but it's certainly not sufficient to make me happy as a whole person, right?
Right. Well, you can't get happiness from one thing.
No.
I'm starting to feel, as you know, you go through different levels, professionally, right? That the respect people have for the work they're doing does grow. That they do take it seriously. They the time that they're spending working on it is given the effort it deserves. And I think that's a nice thing about the few upward steps that I've taken, is that, you know, my appreciation for just doing the work, regardless of if it particularly calls to me or not.
Right.
I'm enjoying that, you know, you want to do a good job, that you want to give it your best, and you want to feel, you might not know all the answers, but you want to be kind of proficient, and, you know, wanting to apply that to other things in my life as well. So I'm finding it useful, but, you know, there's still a ways to go.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, mastery of at least something in life, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like, I don't know that there's going to ever be one thing where I can, at the end of the day, say I have mastered that thing, no matter how small, right? Because people work with wood, or, you know, I typically think of more creative things when I think about that, right? Like mastering accounting, you know, there are accounting masters out there without a doubt, but it's not the old master that we're necessarily thinking of, right?
Right.
Thinking about some kind of physical endeavor, whether it's with your body or creating something. I think most people on the street think, yeah, that's when I think of like that's what I mean. But mastery of something. But I don't know. You know, so you try to, get in where you fit in, and don't. Well, it's like this, like our original point. Um, don't be afraid to step out a little bit and get outside your comfort zone, and don't wait for perfect because it's never going to happen.
Right.
Just keep moving and trust the process, which I really like that because life is nothing but process.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing but change, right?
Yeah.
At all times, for better, for worse, but it's always changing. And so, you know, riding that wave, that sine wave, like all the way through without completely just falling off, or I don't know. I mean, just there are times when it's like, I don't know what this all means.
Right.
But then you just kind of have to trust the process, right? And that gets a little zen and all that. But I think that works,
It seems to, right? I had shut myself in for many years,
Mm-hmm.
and I never re-entered the stream of life. So I didn't participate in the process. And I felt so isolated and so alone, and you become afraid to try new things, right? Because to be a beginner is to be a fool,
Uh-huh.
and to make a fool of yourself in front of those that know what they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And that was, to engage in the process is one of the reasons I started jujitsu, was so that I could see going through this to see if it could give me confidence. And as my proficiency grows, my I used to think conditioning. I used to think conditioning was like the act of having good cardio. I didn't realize that conditioning was your body fully adapting to the activity, building muscle in places where the activity requires, and things of that nature. And going through the process that now my body can do things it couldn't do before, and it can handle things that it couldn't. My mind is more adept, so things are moving slower than it used to. And seeing that kind of help, like, oh, I can. It's evidence that growth is possible, and I think that's also one of the reasons why, when I met you, the fact that you're a bit of a mountaineer, I found to be
Just a bit.
Is it
A bit of one.
I don't know at what, because I don't understand mountaineering to any degree, so I can't speak to at like what level you participate in it in. But I mean, you've summited some mountains, you've done some rock climbing, which makes you pretty proficient. In the from the viewpoint that I have sitting in this chair.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
How did you get started?
Well, I mean, when I moved out here, I knew I wanted to do some of these glaciated climbs, and I knew that was a technical thing because you have to worry about crevasses and rope up, and you can't just, at least if you want to do it right, you want to understand the techniques and be equipped, but it's mostly about knowledge and having the judgment to apply that knowledge to different situations. And so yeah, when I moved out here, from the East, I took a class that was fantastic and used that as a sort of a launching pad, met people, went on a few group climbs with people who, already know what they're doing. And then from there met through like another class with the same organization, other people that I would then go climb with just outside of the organization. And that's kind of what I do today. It's interesting, but it's like anything where if you don't do it all the time, you get rusty. And for me, at least, it's seasonal. I'm not really doing it year round. There are people who do winter climbs. And now that I can finally ski, that's something I can at least think about maybe. But it's it's this whole, it's a whole ball of wax. It's a whole world of knowledge. You can never stop learning. But at the end of the day, I am a dilettante in the sense that, I'm doing weekend climbs. I mean, as you know from the movies you've been watching, mountain climbing, I mean, truly the sky is the limit, right? People going all around the world doing all kinds of stuff, ice climbing, mixed ice and rock, Himalayas, all that stuff. I'm not like that, right? So my achievements are much more modest. But you know what? When I moved out here, I only had at the time, I've actually achieved my goals. Like the mountains that I've summited, those are the ones I like, I'm not looking to like break new ground necessarily. I just want to get safely up and down, see the views, say I did it. And I've mostly done that for the most part. So, but it'll be interesting. I mean, when you and I get out there the next couple of weeks and start playing around a little bit, that'll be good. Be good for me because I've done so little in the last couple of years with the pandemic. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's a goal of mine, and I think, I think the insecurity I had growing up, I think at the last, as there was this big focus on like what it meant to be a man, and pushing yourself and having these, not necessarily accomplishments for the world, but these things that you put yourself through so that you could respect yourself.
Absolutely.
And
tests.
Yeah.
Right.
And climbing a mountain seemed like one. So I think we'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
When that happens. 'Cause, I want to know what it's like. What was the first mountain that you summited?
Well, I mean, probably the first real mountain was Long's Peak in Colorado. So that's 14,000 plus. It's all these mountains now in the West are heavily trafficked, right? So it's not like 30, 40, 50 years ago when, mountaineering was this tiny band of, outliers. It's a very popular thing now. So you're never alone on a mountain, which ultimately can be good, but it also can be bad because you get things like bottlenecks and people climbing all over each other. But yeah, Long's Peak is it's not technical. You're scrambling at different points. There's a little bit of exposure, but it was a good first run at it. But that was when I was still living back east, so that was kind of a one-off. And then coming here, just doing different glaciated volcanoes, and that's a different level because with the glaciers, you're concerned about crevasse risk, right, and falling into these chasms potentially, and so to be safe, you rope up and you have at least one other person, if not two, on a rope with you, occasionally even more, to make sure that no one goes into the abyss and doesn't come back. And so yeah, it's, but again, like I said, in the last couple of years, so I did, it's just kind of been a up and down, depends on the season, how much I actually get done. Since the pandemic, tragically little in the way of actual summits. That's the other thing too to keep in mind. I've been up on mountains many, many times where we don't summit for any number of reasons. Now, typically most of these we've gone back and summited ultimately, but maybe not on the first try, maybe not even on the second try. And we're fine with that. People I climb with, we're not, it's not do or die. Okay. It's just not, the mountains aren't going anywhere, except for these volcanoes. I guess they could blow up, but I'm not worried about that. So, again, like when we go up, we'll take it slow. We'll put eyes on things, get comfortable, because so much of it's psychological in addition to the physical. Mm-hmm.
Now, a crevasse, because I haven't been up on a mountain. Mm-hmm. I've seen like on documentaries where they put a ladder over this crack, and they're going up the mountain, but there's this crack, and it just it's hard to tell how far down it goes or what the hell is down there. But it looks horrifying, to be honest. How far down it goes. So are these cracks in the glacier?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what they are. As the glacier is essentially always moving like a big ice river down the flank of the mountain, right? Mm-hmm. And as it does that, it will it's actually, it's carving the landscape as it's going down, but it's also being moved by the landscape, right? So where a glacier runs into a ridge, like a rock ridge, right? Um, and it cleaves the glacier in two. Well, what's going to happen is it doesn't just cleanly cleave. There's going to be all of these cracks around there, right? And because essentially this plastic ice flow, and again, it's a slow moving river, but it's kind of plastic ice at the base. It will move, but then at the upper layers, it will crack in that process. And so you're going to have wherever the glacier is moving down the mountain, where there's twists and turns, that's where you're going to find cracks typically on the outside of the turn. Or if it's being cleaved by some rock formation, you're going to have crevasses there. But at the end of the day, you could have crevasses anywhere on the glacier. So when you're on a glacier with crevasses, you almost always rope up. We see these movies now, these documentaries where these heroes go out there and they don't. It's just them, and it's just a risk that they take, right? And part of it's like, what time of year are you going as well? As it gets warmer and as you get into summer, the snow cover melts, right? And so it exposes the crevasses. And so if you're actually going, that's one thing where winter climbs can actually be safer from some perspectives because the crevasses are all snowed over.
That's good to know. How did you respond when you first saw one?
The first real one I saw was on Baker in northern Washington. And you're seeing it at night, right? Because you're climbing at night. It's an alpine summit. And so you're alpine starts, what I meant to say. So you're getting up in the wee hours, and you've got a headlamp on, and so you're seeing these things for the first time, like by night, by flashlight, basically. And we saw these things, and it was just like the blue of that ice as it goes down. I mean, it's pretty magical, is what it is. And then you cross over. You can either make an end run around one, or in some cases there's snow bridges and you cross the snow bridge, but only one person at a time because they do collapse with regularity. So you're taking all these precautions, and there's methods to the madness right as you're going through. But yeah, that was my first, and these were pretty big. They were big enough. There was like not just a little crack in the snow, but like a pretty yawning chasm where you're looking down it, and it's just this endless sort of infinity blue going down in there. And that was really neat. That was eye opening. But the only time I've done a ladder on Rainier, there was a ladder, to cross, but you have there's basically a hand line, a rope line next to it. So you're not just, scrambling up a ladder, waiting to fall into the abyss. You clip in, and there's, you take these precautions, but ladders, that's old school, big mountain climbing, like Everest, those old timers, they would throw ladders across these things. It's not really, I don't think it's considered really sporting anymore to use ladders, to use that kind of hardware. Mm-hmm. But like on Everest, like guided climbs, I'm pretty sure they're still using ladders to get up that sucker.
So my biggest question, getting back down, because there's those steeper parts of the climb. Are you going back down backwards, or are you? I mean, what's the method for descent?
Great question. For a couple reasons, because one, it depends is a short answer, but it's a great question because the descent is the most dangerous part of the climb for at least two reasons. One is, I think it's three reasons actually. One is people are so focused on the summit, right, and being safe getting up to the summit that they make the summit, and it's like, I made it, I'm good. So there's this sort of psychological, sort of this false dawn of, well, we kind of done, our work is done here. Mm-hmm. We summited, we're good. Well, it's not. You've got to get all the way back down the mountain. So there's that psychological piece. Physiologically, again, focusing on the person, you're more tired, right? You're more exhausted. You're sleep deprived, you sore. Certainly if you've had any kind of twist or injury, you're going to be hurting. Hopefully that's not the case. But at the minimum, you're going to be getting tired at the very minimum. And then three, you've got gravity, you're fighting gravity all the way down. Now you're fighting it on the way up because of course, gravity is always present, but you're not moving in the same direction as gravity. So it's the momentum is pulling you down as you're clambering down. And so that's where you get into methods of descent. It depends on what the surface conditions are like, and also the grade, how steep is it. You know, you're going to be going, of course, facing forward always, unless and until you reach a certain steepness. And then there's different methodologies. There could be step kicking in backwards as you're going down in your crampons. If it's truly steep enough and it's like more like a climbing pitch, you might rappel down. And so that you're in a rope in that case, and you're letting yourself down. So it just depends. I mean, like on Hood, usually people are going to just individually down climb. Usually there'll be a part where I think every time I've done it, I've been face in on the steepest part, just stepping in. It feels very secure, by the way, when you've got crampons on and you're driving them in.
Okay.
And you go that, and it's not many feet. It's like 60, 70, 80 feet of like that. Mm-hmm. And then at some point you reach a position where you can get back facing forward. But even then, and you start going down, it's still steep by most people's standards, right? Mm-hmm. And so some people, it can be a little harrowing because you're just looking down at the exposure, right? Now you're facing the abyss. And so particularly if there's a good snowpack, the best way to get down is to plunge step, where you're just marching. You're not taking little tentative steps. And this is where it takes some confidence. You're stepping out, boom, plunging your heel, plunging your heel, plunging your heel. And once you get momentum, you don't stop.
Okay.
Right? You just keep it going, because to stop suddenly or for no reason can get you off balance, right? And so just like in your jiu-jitsu, where so much of what you're doing is, now you're working with another body and you're trying to stay in your balance and throw them off balance, you are always trying to climb in balance. And that's actually a phrase, climbing in balance.
Okay.
And climbing in balance is how you help ensure that you don't slip and fall, because falling is what, of course, leads to disaster on the mountain potentially.
Right.
So we have all these techniques to help us if we do fall, but the idea is the best defense is don't fall. And so footwork, and that's one of the things we'll get into before we start really going up the mountain, is how do you even climb in crampons, and when do you put crampons on, and just good footwork, and when you're on a side of a hill versus going straight up it or down it. It's just different techniques. The book I left with you will show you some of that, right?
Okay. And why the because when you're usually summiting, you're like summiting like at dawn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that just the best view, or is that just the ideal time?
It's safety. In this part of the world, it's safety because at least, so the high climbing season is late spring to the summer. And so what happens is, as the sun rises and hits the mountain, it increases the risk of ice fall and rock fall, because the ice is melting. It's getting hit by the sun. The temperatures are rising, right? And that's true even if it's not above freezing. The sun's hitting it, that can be warming it up enough to dislodge bad things, right? So the idea is you go up in the dead of night, everything is nice, cold, dark, locked into place. Mm-hmm. And so, because that's one of the, there are a number of objective hazards on a mountain, right? And people always think of the one of, well, just falling off the mountain. Well, yeah, there's that. That's the exposure, right? That's falling down, blunt force, body trauma, all that. But then the other danger is things coming down on you. Mm-hmm. And in the case of this part of the world, it's rocks or it's ice. And so you mitigate that risk by going up at night. Hopefully you hit more or less around dawn. As you're going up the final pitch, the sun is rising and you can look out, you do get a great view, right? And then you hustle back down safely, and then you're off the mountain.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And,
yeah.
It's in accordance with that theme of like trying to catch up, those years I spent kind of shut in and
Dissolute.
not a part of the process.
Yeah.
You know, as a young man, like sitting there talking to yourself or whoever would listen about how the world should be, you know, instead of getting your ass out there and getting after it and getting after it, not necessarily like, you know, alpha bro thing.
Sure,
but you know, participating.
Yep.
You know, learning things and really stepping out and seeing what you're capable of, you know, and exposing, you know, I'm looking forward to exposing my mind to new things.
Well, it's interesting. So a book that I think we've at least touched on a couple times, The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. So I picked it back up again. I was reading it and then I was like, I don't want to read about death right now. So I'm just going to put it down and move on. But I picked it back up. And part of the reason I set it down too is there's a lot of Freudian stuff in it, which I don't really care for generally, but it's still pretty enlightening. And one of the, I skipped forward to one of the chapters that talks about depression, right? And sort of the working theory here is, I don't know how much of this was psychoanalytic generally versus just Ernest Becker's opinion, but one way to describe someone who's depressed is, well, because he's talking about death in general, right? That's the theme of the book, like our fear of death and how do we go about our lives, living our lives, notwithstanding the fact that we are going to die one day and we know it, unlike lower animals, right? And so people who are depressed, they're afraid of engaging in life. But what's perverse is they're also very afraid of death, right? So it's the worst of both worlds. And there's a concern that if they step out at all, and I guess this could probably apply to like a neurotic person too, but I risk death doing these things. But in fact, the only way to if not extinguish, to assuage that fear of death is to take risks, right? It goes back to the process, right? Mm-hmm. You have to get out there and do things you have to expose yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just all of it's a boogeyman. It's all one big boogeyman.
And that's
I don't like boogeymen, by the way.
I don't either.
And they still scare me.
They do. If I'm coming up from the basement and it's dark, you know, and sometimes I don't know who I'm proving it to. Sometimes I'll go slow, like to prove to the dark.
Oh, that you ain't scared.
No, but every fiber of my being is wanting to sprint up the stairs.
Sure.
But when I went to Hawaii, I went on this men's retreat. And we did a few things.
That was the toxic men's retreat you went on, right?
Yeah, the toxic one. Yeah, it was the Big Island men's retreat, run by Coach Andrew Marshall, Embody the Practice. Shout out to Professor Andrew. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's doing these men's retreats to kind of get men together, get us in a spiritual environment, give us an opportunity to experience some things in a way that we normally wouldn't on the Big Island. And we went to Hawaii, and we ended up staying in the cloud forest. And we had 2 nights of, we were off the grid, and we did 2 ayahuasca ceremonies, which I was really nervous about because I had limited exposure to psychedelics before that. So I did DMT once, and I don't think I fully broke through. I did mushrooms a handful of times, and I did 1 5-gram mushroom trip to prepare myself for the ayahuasca experience. The ayahuasca experience was absolutely tremendous, but not something I had ever experienced before. We ended up cliff diving off the southernmost point of the U.S. It was like a 35-foot cliff, and straight down into the water, into the open ocean.
Right.
And never had done something like that before. We ended up going to the black sand beach, and he had run out, and the beach was very aggressive. So there was a powerful current, big waves, and he ran out there naked, swam a good ways out. And, you know, I'm not an open ocean swimmer. I don't swim a whole lot. I can swim. And I swam all the way out there, you know, and then you feel the pull of the ocean. Just how
That's pretty elemental.
it was. And I got out there for a little bit and treading water for a second. I'm like, you know what? I don't know what my swim stamina is, so I'm gonna get my ass back to the shore.
Absolutely, yeah.
And for a few minutes, not a few minutes, but like a minute, I wasn't the current backwards wasn't allowing me to make progress.
Ooh, not good.
Not good. So, eventually made it back without any problems. I had a hard time getting out of the water because the waves were so powerful. But
people die like that every day of the week.
Yeah. So
it's sad.
I was rightly nervous,
Yeah.
but happy to have done it. And then we went snorkeling in the open ocean. So not in that carted off, netted off area at the resort, but you're in the open ocean in Hawaii, at a coral reef, and there is a path from the beach. So we're off the known path, and there is a path within the coral reef to get out to the ocean. Swim out in the ocean, see some beautiful fish. We couldn't find the dolphins, which I was half okay with, because to swim with an animal that's so intelligent and huge, just it seemed scary, though I wanted to see them. Saw a bunch of other fish and animals within the sea floor, and then I was swimming back. The waves are moving you every which way, and the closer you get to shore, the more aggressive it gets. And I lost, and the path couldn't have been but maybe 10 feet wide. That's the path through the reef, and I lost it. And it took me an hour swimming in the ocean trying to find.
Oh shit.
Yeah, and it was, it pushed me to stay calm. I have a snorkel on, but I don't get to stand up and so you tread water a little bit, look around, and it took me, and I got swept up onto onto part of the reef, and there's sea urchins everywhere. So I'm really like, oh my God, and I'm lost, and then you're getting stuck in these pockets of reef that'll come up to the surface, but you can't get through it. You can't just climb up and walk through. But the opportunity to kind of go through that and be like, you know what, it's not that bad. You'll get through it, and happier for the experience. Stepping into the jiu-jitsu gym for the first time, and you're like, these people are, and it's an MMA gym. And like, these are going to be tough guys. This is going to be an intimidating environment, and to step out and like, all right, I'm gonna get my butt whooped for a little bit, but as I gain experience and exposure to it, my comfort with it grows. And then the next thing, you're strutting out there like it's home. So, and I'm looking forward to, experiencing that with the mountain climbing. And like I had told you earlier, going to a rock or a climbing gym, controlled environment, everything's buckled up, you're harnessed in, and getting about 50 feet up, made it to the top of the wall. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? And I'm hooked up. I'm fine. They're like, let go. I'm like, absolutely not. I am not. Somebody come up here and get me.
That's right.
But again, better for the experience.
Always.
So, and again, trying to play catch up. And I think this is going to be a useful part of that internal growth needed to kind of take more steps in life. So.
Yeah. I mean, and part of, for me, like living in this part of the world on the West Coast, so much of it has been, I feel like for myself, but also for people I've met, people are young at heart, right? So we're trying different things, even though we're maybe not actually young anymore, but there's just this more, the energy is just, directed towards things that aren't sitting in your home or golfing. And look, it doesn't have to all be like extreme sports or anything like that, but I just feel in general, to take your point and kind of carry it forward, it doesn't have to be jujitsu or mountaineering or, anything with a life threat component to it. It could be trying to learn an instrument, or, but here's the thing, man, like going back to very early in this conversation, I mentioned these speed bumps. I'll just walk away like, no. That's what's kept me for so many years from learning, from mastering anything, because I've got a low tolerance for frustration, right? And so if I start getting frustrated with something and I don't have to do it, right? So there's things like you have to do. We go to school, you have to do these things, and you're frustrated, but you just can't get up and walk out. Some do, and it usually doesn't end very well, ultimately. But for the rest of us, let's say we're at least checking those basic boxes. And then for me, it's like, for the longest time, it's like, as long as I'm checking the basic boxes, I'm good. But then it always like, you're not really, you've got one life, and you might want to try to mix it up a little bit. And so I've been trying, and it's failing upward, because like trying to learn the guitar, it's a disaster. I can't learn the guitar, but it's like, well, but I'm only better for it. You know what I mean? So what's the lesson here? Are we reaching this point where we've answered all of the problems, or?
Do you ever answer it? Or
No,
is it just
God,
like,
no.
is that little feeling like, because how long have you been at the guitar now?
Oh, so that, like 6 months.
And are you starting to get a little bit of, not necessarily like a adept proficiency at it, but are you starting to be able to kind of strum a little bit of a tune and enjoy?
Well, what I'll do is bring the guitar next time, and then you can be the judge.
Oh, that'll be cool.
No, I'm not going to do that, because it's not what I can do. So what I can do is I've got a few little melodies in my back pocket I can do, right? All in the top 3 fret. Well, actually, it's the bottom 3 frets of the guitar. Because that's where you start learning, right up there where the neck is, or the headstock. You picture people like holding the guitar like that. And so one thing about the guitar, it's all backwards. So when you look at a guitar, the body's at the bottom, you've got the neck, and then you've got the headstock with the tuning pegs on it. You would think, well, you're counting up on the frets that are going up the neck. Well, no, you're counting up from the top going the other direction towards the body. So it's counterintuitive initially.
Oh.
Also, the string count, when you're holding the guitar, the first string you see at the top is not the first string, it's the 6th string. The first one's at the bottom. So there's all of these counterintuitive things you have to like push through. But basically, I can do a handful of melodies. I know a handful of chords, but it's not like, I can't really please crowds at this point, right? And to please crowds, you have to be able to do significant adept like chord progressions, and particularly if we want just crowds, just people you bring over, a date you bring over, like have a few riffs in your back pocket of like good music, right? And be able to play it proficiently. That I am way, if I ever get there, it's a long way out.
But how does it feel when you're able to strum your little melody for yourself, honestly?
It's good, but let me tell you, the problem is I've only had this little pocket full of melodies, and I've added one in the last month. And when I say little, I'm talking about, think Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how long that lasts. It's like 12 bars, but it's still a series of notes over a series of strings and frets. And if you can land them all, it does sound like music, because it is. And it is neat. And then when in strumming, again, all of this is sort of like, I ask myself, like, why am I doing it? The answer is immediate. It's like, because why not? Because you're not doing anything better than doing this. So just shut up and keep trying to do it, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and why not?
We're not raising families yet.
No. So without kids, what excuse do I have not to really embrace, it's still my life, right? When you have kids, it's no longer really yours. And I have a great appreciation for parents that really do give their lives up for their children. And because we don't have children yet, I feel this sense of obligation to my spirit to experience as much as I can. And
Well, that is your child, right? Your
Yeah.
spirit.
yeah,
Not to get too new agey, but there's some truth to that. You got to nurture it, right? Grow it, because we don't have a Carl of our own, you know.
no, we don't.
You
Nice
need a
Walking Dead
Carl.
reference.
Yeah. And those of you who don't know that, shame on you. But I didn't know it for many years, and then
Finally, you saw the light,
I saw the light.
or you saw The Walking Dead.
I did. The
So
darkness.
that'll be another thing to talk about.
Oh, sure.
But I think this has been a nice little,
Yeah, a little jaunt,
yeah.
a jaunty little stroll.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for listening. This has been a pleasure.
Y'all have a good Sunday.
All right. Bye-bye.